Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Shane and I'm delighted to be joined by Tracy van der Schef, MVP, The Good Stuff, South Africa, who will be talking to you today about Microsoft 365, the toolbox to enable digital citizens to work from home efficiently. Remember to join the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC20. Don't forget to check out the Resource Center. This is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. Simply visit SharepointEurope.com and click the content link at the top. Join us for ESPC20 online this October 14th and 15th. With pre and post virtual conference tutorials October 12th and 16th. Enjoy world-class, affordable Microsoft 365 learning, connections and inspiration from wherever you are. Group discounts available. See SharepointEurope.com for full details. After the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you have in the questions window. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you'll be notified by email when they become available. And now I'm going to pass you to our webinar presenter, Tracy van der Schef. Hello, Tracy.
Hello, how awesome it is to actually be here with everyone. And I'm really excited. And I just want to, Shane, can I please ask you to just share the settings with me again so that I can share the right screen?
Yeah. No problem. Just bear with me here for 1 sec.
Technology, that's what we do, peeps, but it's so nice to see everyone.
I think it says you are the presenter, so you should be able to.
I just want to get the screen to share, so just give me 1 moment. Sorry, everyone. So.
Yeah, there you go, Tracy. You're away.
Here we go. Sorted. I just want to confirm, Shane, you can see my presentation?
Yeah, and I can see you looking great as well, Tracy.
So it's really, really cool to be here. And that, people, is your first lesson for today for working efficiently from home, is that when you're not quite sure or you're not displaying the right screen, take a deep breath, ask questions and say, hey, just show me that again, or where was that screen? Because we all work with different technologies. So it's absolutely okay to not always know everything. I think that's one of my most famous sayings, is that you don't have to know everything, you just need to know everyone who does. And today, that's Shane for me, because Shane knows everything. So I'm very, very excited to be here with you and to share some incredible resources with you to help you feel more comfortable with the environment that you're working with, but also to have the confidence and to have a better self-esteem, because that's the thing that's been keeping us back from using technology well. So as mentioned, all the way from South Africa, and as I said, so happy to be here. I mean, how incredible is technology for us to work from anywhere, at any time, on any device. Look at me, all the way from sunny South Africa, having the ability to be right there where you are, whether it's on your mobile phone, in your vehicle, or at home, or at the office. So let's get started. I always include my session overview, and more so as well for those who looks at the recordings afterwards. So it's important for me that you know what we are going to cover in the session, and you can always just go back to the session overview as well if you just want to make sure what the different things that I'm touching on. But what is important for me today is that Microsoft 365 or Office 365 has so many tools and so many apps and features and services that it could be very overwhelming. And I know that this webinar is going to be overwhelming because I talk very fast and I share a lot of cool things. But take your time afterwards, go and look at the recording, and you'll get the hang of this very soon. And reach out on social media. There's such an incredible community out there that's really dedicated and passionate about helping people. So use those Twitter handles that was already, and mine as well, at Tracy VDS. Reach out on social media if you have questions, and there's a great community out there that's always willing to help. And then don't forget, Shane did mention this, but we've got an incredible conference coming up, and I've got a great session that I'm also delivering there around the adoption resources that Microsoft's made available. So I'm hoping that I'll see you at the conference as well. And as mentioned, all the way from South Africa, how easy has technology made everything for us? So let's get started. The different areas that I want to cover today is I want to talk about co-innovation. Now, it's an interesting concept. I don't think we know what innovation is, but what does co-innovation mean? Then, of course, I'm going to go through all the Office 365 apps and services. I want to run through all that goodness out there. And don't worry if you don't remember everything. You've got enough time to come back to this. Make some notes, jot some things down. I hope that you're using OneNote. I'm a very big fan of OneNote. And because it's searchable, because written notes isn't that searchable, is it? I'm going to be looking at Microsoft Teams, and then surprise guest today, also Microsoft Lists. I want to talk about Microsoft Lists. I'm going to take a look at co-authoring because I do think that that's super important in this whole working from all over the place together. Many of us aren't back in offices yet, and I think a lot of companies are going to change that, where we don't need to travel to offices anymore. So that's definitely one of the good things that I think has come out of this interesting thing that life has gone through. And then, of course, I'm going to share some tips and tricks with you on how to make things better when you do work from home, when maybe you don't have the network that everyone else has, you don't have that big fiber. Especially in South Africa, that's something that not everyone has, okay? So I want to share some great work from home tips and tricks with you. And then, as mentioned, we are going to leave some time at the end for some questions. So please, if you think of any questions during the webinar, please just write them down and afterwards engage and share those questions with us. And always remember, there's no such thing as a stupid question, okay? The only real stupid questions in life is the ones that we don't ask, okay? So always remember that other people can learn from your questions as well. So don't be afraid to ask questions. You might ask the question, but 20 other people can actually learn from it. So I do hope that you enjoy this webinar, and I do hope that you get great value from it, and that you'll leave feeling more comfortable, and that you'll have a better IT tech self-esteem after the webinar. So let's get started. The first thing I do want to talk about is this whole new idea around digital citizens. So we know that citizen developers, we kind of started using that phrase a couple of years ago, and that's the fact that normal people like me, a non-developer, can now develop solutions with Office 365 or with Microsoft 365. Now, this is the direct definition of a digital citizen. So a digital citizen is a person using information, technology, IT, in order to engage in society. Now, the definition says politics and government, and I completely scratched that out because I don't think we should get involved in politics and government stuff anymore. There's just too much drama in the world, and life is too short. Let's stick to the good things that's out there and the cool information that we can share. So then my first thing that I want to discuss is co-innovation. Now, co-innovation is that little bubble that we get involved in where we can share and we're creative and we get innovative, but it's also a way of how we can tap into different resources. That could be humans as well as apps and services. So how do we use different things together to co-innovate and to get more from it? The days are past when one thing does everything, and such a great example. Anyone who knows SharePoint from back in the day would know that in SharePoint you could go and create a calendar, you can create a task list, you could create a project list, you could create a document library, a picture library, an announcement list, a discussion board, all these crazy, incredible things, surveys. No longer does SharePoint offer all of that, but the apps and services together offer it. So through the different apps and services in Microsoft 365, we actually achieve co-innovation before we even try to do it. How incredible is that? Now, when I look at Microsoft 365, so often people move to Microsoft 365 purely because of Exchange for mail or because Skype for business, you know, they have to replace that or something, but there's so much more to it. So if I think very importantly as part of those subscriptions, you'll get the latest Office. Okay, now that name's changed, by the way. It used to be Office ProPlus, and it's now called Microsoft 365 Apps, I think. Still quite new for me. I don't remember all those names, but remember that it includes the latest version of Office, which is a big one for me. Microsoft Office is my business critical apps for sure. Then, of course, it brings those productivity tools in as well. So OneNote and Planner and your Yammer communities and lists, of course. We're going to talk about lists. That's going to be exciting. Then Stream and Form for your surveys and Sway for information packs. Such an incredible, incredible tool. Then also, when you start getting serious about business and when you start understanding how Microsoft 365 works and when your content is stored there, you can start with evolving your business. And you're going to evolve your business using Power Automate, Power BI, Power Apps. Now that's called the Power Platform, by the way. Very, very incredible, strong platform that you can use to completely transform your business. And if I look at all of those apps and services, I definitely, and I have to give credit to Alistair Pugin. He came up with this this terminology. Okay, I'm an Afrikaans girl, so English is not my first language. And he introduced me to the term mutualistic symbiosis, and I absolutely love it. And that's where different things can feed off each other without hurting each other, okay? And the apps and services are in perfect mutualistic symbiosis. They feed and help each other and support each other and make each other stronger. So I'm excited to share all of that with you today. To first go back to something that I'm very passionate about, of course, training and helping people evolve. Now, my company motto is to facilitate the evolution of human capabilities, okay? And how do I do that? Now, if I look at Microsoft 365, it's not about the apps that you use. It's not about me saying you have to use Teams because everyone else is using Teams. I want you to use Teams so that you can communicate better and collaborate better and work better with content and develop practical and functional skills. So the digital literacy skills, this 8 pillars, is something that I base all my training programs on. And each of those pillars, each of those skills that you develop as a digital citizen is supported by those different apps and services. Really incredible. So start thinking about this a little bit different. It's not about becoming efficient in using Microsoft Teams. It's about being an efficient communicator using Teams and Yammer communities and Stream and all of those amazing things. So definitely a good thing. I've written so many blogs about digital literacy. It's crazy. I've got a lot to say about it. And I definitely struggle to stay quiet about it. But please go and take a look at the digital literacy and all the crazy things I have to say about that. It's also an incredible way to roll out Microsoft or Office 365 in your company, is to make people understand what is the purpose of us using these different apps, because that can be difficult. So why must I use this thing? Is it just because someone in IT thought it was a good idea, or is there really benefit for me in there? And as a digital citizen, all of these apps and services helps you build those critical digital skills that we need to not only survive in today's world, but to evolve and be a step ahead of everyone else. Very, very important for me. Also something, before I even get to Microsoft 365, that I want you to understand is that when you engage in rolling out these apps and services in your company, and by rolling out these days, it might be switching a button on, okay? So it might just be about activating the licenses. Don't expect your users to just figure out things as they go. That's not fair, okay? And it just doesn't work like that. I've seen so many companies fail because they send out an email that says, hey, Trace, from Monday you're on OneDrive. Have a nice day. I hope you enjoy OneDrive. Here's a link to a YouTube video if you're not sure how it works. And believe me, we don't get user adoption by that. And we don't get people that are comfortable and feel efficient and enabled by rolling out technology like that. So make sure that your digital strategy is communicated in the company. And what I mean by that is the company needs to indicate what their purpose is for using the platform. So company X, and my company's name is The Good Stuff, okay? So there's a reason for it, because we do the good stuff. Now, The Good Stuff has decided to use Microsoft 365 because we want to enable our digital citizens to achieve more. We want them to work from anywhere at any time. We want their stuff to be secure, etc. And it's very important to document these intents into what we call a digital strategy. So it could just be an infographic. I'm so over boring long Word documents, okay? So no longer am I going to do those things. But think of doing an infographic to say that, hey, this is how we did things in the past. So maybe we saved all our files on the file share and you put attachments on emails, but this is now the next level. This is the apps we now suggest that you use. This is where you will store your videos. So make sure that you actually describe and document your intent in the company. That's very, very important for me. We have to create guidance for our employees, because don't ever forget, your greatest asset ever in a company is the employee. That's the greatest asset that you should be investing in. So please make time to make sure that you do invest in those assets. Now, let's take a look at Microsoft Stream. So if you haven't messed around with Stream, I'm just going to go through some of the different apps that I think you can really use to work better remotely and to work from home. But not just that. Even if we work together in our office, We've never quite gotten it right to really work well together, and all of these apps and services are going to help you do that. Now, Stream for me is the new platform where you're going to store your videos, okay? It just displays better there, it compresses better in there. And in Microsoft Stream, what is important for me is that you think through, you've got a plan. Will I have channels that those videos lie in, or will I load it in a group that already exists? So that would be like groups that for teams that already exist. But think through of your channels. You have to categorize your content. You can't just have this big folder, if you can call it that, that has all your thousands of videos in it. So I would have a channel, for example, with efficient meetings in Microsoft Teams, and I would have a couple of videos in there. Okay, so think of your channels. Very important, Microsoft Stream does transcriptions as well. You have to clean those up before you publish those videos. For a person like me who speaks so fast, it's a good thing to do. If you don't clean them up, rather switch the transcriptions off. But that means you can actually search for a specific word used in a video. I mean, how incredible is that? At the moment, you can't share your Stream videos external, so hopefully in future, I'm really holding thumbs, Microsoft, that would be a possibility. And remember that you can embed your Stream videos in different apps and services. So let me show you what I mean by that. Now, if I have a channel with videos and Stream, this is typically what it would look like. So there's my Microsoft Teams channel. I can make it company-wide so people can access it, or I can actually assign it to a specific group and only those group of people. I can share a channel or a video anywhere in Microsoft 365. So by clicking on the three dots there, I can get a sharing link to share the video with people, but I can also share the channel with people, which is what I prefer to do. So if I have to go to Microsoft Teams, for example, here you'll see that I've added the Stream channel as a tab in my team on one of the channels, and then it displays all the videos that I've actually added inside of that. Let me just go inside of that specific Microsoft team. So that's a very cool thing to do, is to add your Stream channel onto a team so people can see all the videos that's been added in there. Then another way to do that is to actually add Stream channels on top of SharePoint pages. Again, the web part exists for it. So there you can see that same Stream channel, and there you can see that the videos are actually added to be displayed on the page. So that's a pretty cool thing. You can add a single video as well. You can add them in news pages from SharePoint. So definitely consider with where you surface your content. The magic these days isn't about the apps we use. It's about how we surface the content that's in those apps into the places where people work already. And most of the time, it's going to be Microsoft Teams. So rethink the way that you surface your content. I don't expect people to navigate all the way to Microsoft Stream to go and look at videos. I want to bring Stream into the SharePoint sites, into the Microsoft Stream, into the Microsoft Teams, and even into Microsoft Sways as documents. I mean, how incredible will that be? So please rethink with how you surface your content. Then let's talk about Yammer communities. Now, Yammer, of course, again, also has a mobile app. You can follow groups. It has live events. It's got video, text, polls, questions, and praises. I've helped a lot of companies during lockdown to actually use Yammer communities to build out their employee engagement projects or programs, because suddenly people lost touch with each other. They didn't see each other in the kitchen anymore, in the canteen, and we had to do something to get them to start talking to each other again, except for through emails. So remember that you can use hashtags in your social communities as well, which becomes topics. So I could have a hashtag that's called free for me, and if I search for free for me, it shows all the resources that everyone has shared, where it actually gives me free resources. Maybe it's free movies that I can watch, or books that I can read, or museums that I can visit, all those type of things. So Yammer is incredible for that, for the employee engagement side. Again, Yammer is great when you surface it on SharePoint pages. So here you can see that you can actually then use those hashtags to surface specific topics on SharePoint pages. I love bringing Yammer out like this, but even think of building a classifieds group where people can advertise things or share information. Definitely a cool thing to surface your Yammer on SharePoint pages. But of course, you can do the same for Teams. I can add a Yammer community as a tab in Team, but I can also add that SharePoint page, which has all my topics on with Yammer to get into Teams. So that is Yammer on a SharePoint page in Teams, okay? That's co-innovation for the win, people. So if I then go to the next screen, you'll see that this is what Yammer looks like when I just add the Yammer group. So I can follow, I can like, I can share content there. I really prefer using Yammer. I think a mistake that companies make, and when I say mistake, I've got to be careful, right? Because a lot of us can do things differently. Something I prefer not doing is to share social type of funny stuff between my work content. So I don't want to, in accounts payable or accounts receivable, in assets, I don't want to see gifts and happy Monday jokes and things because it's too much content I have to go through. I would rather have a separate channel for social. So I'd rather create a separate channel just for social stuff, or add your social community from Yammer as a tab, and that's where we actually do the more social stuff. Then we kind of separate our work content and our fun stuff so that it's easier to search again and to find our content again. So that's super important for me. Then, of course, next up, I want to talk about Microsoft Forms. Now, Microsoft Forms is great for creating surveys. Great, brilliant tool, okay? So easy to create surveys. It's silly. It's amazing that it wasn't there before. Now, Microsoft Forms can be shared externally as well. So think of doing surveys for your customers or gathering information. You can also add a form on a website by using embedded code. So you'll see there that I've got a contact request that I've added on my website because I just got too much spam through the normal contact form. So I just got the embedded form for the Microsoft form, and I surfaced it on my website. So if you look at this in Forms, you can create new forms and new quizzes, okay? This can be shared internally or externally to collaborate. You can also share a form with someone to add questions. So just be careful when you share it, whether it's for people to fill in or for people to collaborate. You can embed it in other apps. So I can bring the code into another app, into a Sway. I can put it on a website. It's very mobile friendly. It's beautiful. And it also has QR codes. I do want to warn you though, please don't create Microsoft Forms for business critical apps. This is not the place where you should be building your new leave application system. Okay, so rather use SharePoint for that and use Power Apps to surface apps that people can fill in for the company. So lots of reasoning to use Microsoft Forms, but don't use it for business critical apps just because it's easy enough to use. Use your forms for surveys and for quizzes and for easy access forms for external people. This is what a form will look like in the desktop view, which is pretty cool. And you'll see there that it's got a preview, which will also show you what it looks like on the mobile view. Under Share, of course, you can have the options on sharing it internally, externally, etc. So have a look at what the form looks like. You've got nice backgrounds that you can insert as well. Such an incredible tool to use. And again, I'm going to show you CoInnovation. It's about bringing the content in where people work together. I've already added the form on a SharePoint page, so there you can see it. I didn't expect people to navigate to a link, so I can add the form, and I can also add the results of the form on a page if I want people to see the graph of what people are saying. So add your forms to pages, which I think is incredible. But look at this. I've added the form as a tab on a Microsoft team. So why not add it where people are working already and they can gather the information right there in their normal workplace? So that's definitely a good thing to do. The next app that I want to show you is Microsoft Sway. Man, I don't think this tool is getting the credit or the acknowledgement that it needs. I absolutely love Sway. So I create Sways for training information packs that I supply to customers because Sways can also be shared externally. Think of a combination of a PDF, a PowerPoint, and a website. That's a Microsoft Sway. They have to be online, of course, to be able to open it. But you stay the owner of a Sway. So whenever you update your Sway, whoever clicks on the link will see the latest updated Sway. Such a brilliant tool to use for things like portfolios, your services and products. I've got my business portfolio in there as well. So if someone contacts me and says, hey, Trace, what training courses do you deliver? Or what consulting or workshops do you do? I just send them the Sway and it's got the latest details in it. But in that Sway, I've also got my Microsoft form that they complete if they're interested. I've got to have videos in there. I've got a map to the area that I work in when people want to see me on site. So Sways are incredible tools. When you go to create a Sway, you'll see that you can share it internally and externally. You can share it to collaborate. You can embed it in other apps and sites. And of course, it's mobile friendly. You'll see that when you go to Sway, you can actually start it from a template. And I must admit, I really struggled with starting a Sway from a template. It was much easier for me to start it from blank. So do some planning above, get your text and your images together, and then build your Sway. There's some great examples out there, and I've done loads of blogs with videos on Sway. So go to my blog, tracyvanderschaaf.com, and you'll find some great resources there. Now those Sways, again, when it comes to co-innovation, look at me adding that sway as a tab on a team. And you can also set the sway to autoplay, by the way. That's even better. So if someone goes to that tab, it'll start scrolling through the pages for them and share information with them. Such an incredible tool. I can also add sways on SharePoint pages. So there you can see I've added it as a web part on a page, maybe for new employees or to help them understand things. And again, you can set it to autoplay, or it can have the play buttons there that helps them click to the next page automatically. Now, of course, this brings me to a very business critical app for me, and that's OneDrive. If you haven't had training on OneDrive, peeps, I have to say that I'm busy training a company, and it's unbelievable how people don't know all the things in OneDrive. I can understand it, but it's unbelievable that people are not training their employees to use OneDrive well, because you can use it wrong. There's so many incredible features in OneDrive, but you really need to understand what it can do to use it safely and securely. I don't want you blaming Microsoft if something goes wrong, purely because you didn't know that you weren't sharing a document correctly. So please make sure that you do go and look at some training material or understand how it works before you start using it without knowing about all the little tips and tricks that you need to know. So of course, OneDrive is available in web, desktop, mobile. You've also got OCR, so I can take a photo of a receipt, and within a couple of seconds, I can search the text that's on the receipt. I actually did something last week, and that was more through Excel, but because of the OCR, I could take a photo and insert it in Excel, so of a table, and it then converts it back to a table. So it's incredible what you can do these days with the technology that we have. It keeps 500 electronic versions of your documents in the background, so that's very important. And then also, it has a 93-day recycle bin where you can restore items from. You can share files internally and externally. You can also revoke access on files. You can also block downloads. You can also say whether you want to allow editing on files or not. And you can also add an extra password to files that you share if it's very highly secure documents. Remember that on the tenant level, so way above on the admin center, there's also settings that you can apply that says expire links after 30 days or something. And that's something that I do. I make all my OneDrive links expire after a certain amount of days. It's just a safety feature that I use, and I think it's a good thing to do. Then, of course, there's the Power Platform as well. I can't go too much into this, but the Power Platform consists of Power BI, Power Automate for your workflow processes, Power Apps, and then the virtual agents, which is the engaging component. So definitely go and check out the Power Apps, because that's a bit more advanced now. But the Power Platform and Power Apps and Power Automate, and as well as Power BI for your reporting dashboards, is an incredible tool to use. Now, this brings me to a very, very exciting thing that I want to share with you today. Microsoft Teams. Now, in the last couple of months, millions of people started using Teams, like way ahead of time that they would have used it, because suddenly a lot of us had to work from home. There's a couple of things that I want you to know about Teams that's very important, though. And this might get me in trouble with some people. So I want you to just have some empathy with why I say these specific things. In Teams, there's a button that you can click right at the bottom there. You'll see Join or Create Team. Now, most companies don't switch this off. Most companies allows all their end users to create, or all their employees to create teams, and I'm quite seriously against that, okay? I don't think it's fair. A wise man once said that with great power comes great responsibility, right? Was it Spider-Man? But that means that if you want to allow people to create these environments, you've got to make sure that they've had decent training. I'm all good for people creating teams if they had the training and they have the support to make sure that they make better informed decisions. But if they haven't had the training, you shouldn't allow them create teams. That's just not fair. And they're going to create very, very complicated environments for themselves. That's going to be very difficult to maintain. And it's also going to lead to over-adoption, believe it or not, because that does exist. Too many teams, too many channels is just a disaster. But when you create on that Join or Create team, very, very importantly, in that about a second that it takes to create that team, there's a lot of things that happens in the background, like a lot of things, okay? It creates a SharePoint site collection. Now, if you don't know how big that is, think intranet big, okay? It creates this massive site collection in the background that you can use. It creates an Office 365 group or an Azure security group and distribution list for the permissions and the Office 365 group that it uses in the background. Creates a shared mailbox, a shared calendar. It creates a workspace in Power BI. It creates a group for Stream. It creates a shared OneNote. It's got a planner that you can create as well. And of course, it's got the SharePoint storage, as I mentioned. In the team, you also have access to your OneDrive and your other cloud files. It gives you the ability to engage with Outlook as well by sending mails through channels, etc. And it gives you the chat functionality through the rebuilt Skype for Business. So chat and call inside of Teams is Skype for Business. It's been rebuilt. And these days, there's lots of apps that you can add as well. So of course, I can add Power Platform apps, Power Automate, Power Apps, Power BI. I can also add forms, as I've showed you. I can add Stream, I can add Sway. Whiteboard is available now. Don't forget about Microsoft Lists. That's also available. Such an incredible, incredible tool. Then also in Teams, which is something that a lot of people don't even know, is the WhoBot. I mean, I love the WhoBot. So go look for the WhoBot. You'll see it here on the left-hand side. There's 3 dots that you can click, and that'll actually open up and you can select the WhoBot. And the WhoBot knows everything about you, okay? And it's permission trimmed as well. So don't worry that everything and everyone knows everything about you, but the WhoBot does. So the WhoBot, you can actually ask questions and say, who did I email about this? Who did I have a meeting with about this? Or who is Sarah? And then it'll bring back the contacts in the company of people that are called Sarah. I mean, it's an incredible tool to use. So please look at using the WhoBot as well. And then, of course, last but not least, is the ability to co-author with the Office documents in Teams is incredible. The ability to work together on the same Office documents at the same time. So co-authoring is incredible in Teams. And then, of course, Teams isn't just about conversations and content, but also being able to schedule and have your meetings through using Teams and being able to categorize your content and find stuff again. That's always a challenge, okay? And Teams definitely has changed that for me. Teams truly has become the virtual workplace for me to bring everything together, whether it's just me or a group of 20 or a couple of thousand people. Teams has absolutely changed my life when it comes to the content that I work with. Now, when we take a look at Teams, and I'm going to just cover some of the basics, there's definitely different ways that you can communicate in Teams, and it's good to understand the etiquette and also the technical ways of doing this. You can send a normal message in a Teams channel, and it's not going to pop up in anyone's machines. It's a kind of a FYI, and if people see it, they see it, and if they don't, they don't. You can also mark messages as important. So when you go to the rich text editing, you can see that there's a little exclamation mark, but you can also use a shortcut, Control-Shift-I, and it'll then flag that message as important, and it also flags the channel that you're on. You can also mention a specific person that's in that team with you, so one of the members, and it'll pop up on that person's machine, and then remind them, you know, that you are talking about them or that you've like sent them a message. But remember that in a team, everyone can still see it, unless you use direct chat, because in direct chat, it's just between you and that person. Then, of course, I can also mention the whole team. So the team name also has a group that you can mention. So I can say hi @finance, and it then pops up on everyone's machines that's in finance. Don't overuse that. So once people start using Teams more, it's important not to annoy them unnecessarily. So once people use Teams more, stop mentioning everyone and rather set it up as important messages. Very cool for me in Teams as well is the ability to post announcements. So I can actually change a message to an announcement. And if you click on that little A with a pen at the bottom there, it opens up the rich text editing, and there's a drop down by new conversation that you can change to announcement. And in announcements, I can pick a background image or a color, and I can make it stand out more. Do remember that if everything is special, then nothing is special, okay? So every single post being an announcement is not gonna help anyone. Keep those announcements for official announcements in your team and in your channels, because that helps people to find them a lot faster. So please follow some etiquette as well when it comes to conversations. And that little thing that I mentioned about social media or social conversations, I'd rather keep it separate. So rather have a separate channel or add a Yammer community as a tab to a team for your social engagements, so that your work stuff kind of stays clean, because less is more, okay? And don't post messages when you don't need to post messages. If you load a document every single day with the latest sales figure, you don't have to go write it in the team and notify everyone. Just go post it in files if people know where to find it. So try and bring down those number of communications we do as well, because we tend to over communicate a bit, I would say. But that's what Outlook did to us, and now we need to change, right? Cultures change. You can also use Teams to schedule meetings from Outlook. So in Outlook, I can say I want to create a Teams meeting, and it then uses the Teams calling and video functionality to be able to launch that meeting. Anyone can join a Teams meeting, even if they don't have Office 365 or Teams, because it'll open in the web for them. So that's pretty cool, okay? And then in Teams, you can also schedule meetings, of course, to allow people to join the meetings when they belong to a team. Now, the limit used to be 250. I'm pretty sure they've changed that to 350 now. But also remember, and that's per Teams meeting, also remember that you can schedule live events. So on this little drop down inside of Teams, if you click on that, you'll have the ability to schedule live events, and those can be opened up externally. And 10,000 people can join, and that's another thing that I saw that they were going to update to 20,000, I think. I use it for my webinars every week, so I definitely use Teams live events, and it gives me a recording, and it also gives people the ability to do Q&A. So check out those live events in Teams as well. And I've done some cool posts about lobby waiting screens as well for live events, so go check that out on my blog on WordPress if you're interested on trying some cool things. This brings me to the Microsoft Lists. Now that just showed in my tenant in the last couple of days. So I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about Microsoft Lists. Now, at first I saw the icon in my office.com portal, okay? So where I go and I see all my apps, and then suddenly it disappeared, and I thought maybe I made Microsoft mad and they took it away, I wasn't sure. And that was a couple of weeks ago, and I've been impatiently waiting for Microsoft Teams. And then in the last couple of days, I suddenly saw that inside of Microsoft Teams, if I click on the Add tab, there it is, Microsoft Lists. So if you click on Add tab in Teams, you will pretty soon you'll see the lists icon, which means that inside of Teams, you can now click and create a new list. Now, something that's important though is that I want you to understand that it still creates that list on SharePoint. So behind a Microsoft team, there's a SharePoint site, right? So before, I would just go to SharePoint, I would go and create that list, and then I would add it as a tab on a team. But now Microsoft has made it so much easier for you. Inside of the team, I can go new list. It's got a bunch of awesome templates you can pick from. So it's got issue tracking and employee onboarding and travel requests. And it's got some great JSON formatting on there. So some things will be red, some things will be changed color-wise. So go check out those lists. You can create a list then to add as a tab to your team. And again, I put a blog out a couple of days ago to help people on how to modify that app. So if you want to add another column to it, and also very, very importantly, please people, these lists do not have automatic default versioning switched on. So if you add the lists as tabs to Teams, please navigate to SharePoint and switch on the versioning. I have logged a ticket on user voice to have people vote for that. So if you want to vote for that and you think it's a good thing, please go vote for it, because it'll help us get that developed or switched on for lists as well. So please consider using the Microsoft Lists. It's an incredible tool. And especially if you're not that strong in SharePoint, this is going to help you to build apps out inside of your Microsoft Teams. Another thing that I want you to consider there is that where you build the list, those are the people that are going to have access to it. I'm quite full of nonsense when it comes to breaking inheritance of permissions on different teams, okay? So I don't want to build a list on a specific team that everyone doesn't have access to if they need it. Then rather go build that list on the team where they need to access it. So if you have an org-wide team, go add that list for, I don't know, issue tracking or something on the org-wide team rather, where everyone does have access to it. Don't build it on a team that's closed to everyone. So please take a look at that you make sure that you build these lists in the right places. I've already touched on this a little bit, but I do want to talk about co-authoring. Now, if I think of co-authoring inside of Office ProPlus or Microsoft 365 apps, you can actually mention someone and invite them to a document. If it's from OneDrive, it'll actually give them access to the document and invite them and say, hey, Tracy wants you to co-author or work together on this document, and it'll give them permissions to the document as well. But while you co-author on a document, that's pretty incredible. You'll see that it shows the names of everyone that's logged into the document with you at the same time. You can actually make comments on the document as well while you're busy having the co-authoring session with them. So think about setting up a meeting with a group of people, and then for the meeting, share a document with them. And while you're on a call with them, you actually talk about the changes that you're making on the document and who's got to add what documents and content, etc. Now, your documents in the cloud, which is OneDrive, or SharePoint, which is Teams, will automatically keep the versions in the background. So the document libraries are set up to keep 500 electronic versions, but you can change SharePoint libraries to keep up to 50,000 electronic versions, okay? And that's on the settings of the library. But if you want to track who changed what, that's going to be tricky because it just saves a version every now and then. So if you want to track changes in your Office documents, remember to switch on track changes like you always have, whether it's in Word, whether it's in Excel. So switch on the track changes if you also want to see who exactly changed which component. Because in the background, Microsoft will keep a couple of versions, but it's not going to necessarily tell you who added which word. So the co-authoring works incredible, people. And remember, co-authoring is only as good as the template is that you share. If it's a blank document, you'll have chaos because everyone's going to type over each other. So make sure that there's sections and guidance. Put little notes in to say who must add what and where people are going to work. So the co-authoring is definitely one of the best things that could have come since sliced white bread. And that'll definitely help you to work together as well, even when you're not in the same location. We don't have to all work on separate documents anymore and try and merge those things. Another great thing about Microsoft Teams is that you can now add an Excel document or a Word document, load it inside the team, and then add that document as a tab on a team. So if there's specific Excel documents that everyone updates every single day, like a register or timesheets or something, or the budget, then why don't you load it in the team and then add it as a tab, which means that the document will be open on the tab and people can actually edit and type. And you can see it in the tab and it's open. So much easier to work like that. So consider to go to add tabs and add an Excel or a work document, and it'll definitely help people to achieve more. So think of adding those tabs. You can also add PDFs as tabs for information or guidelines or things like that that people need to know. Definitely a cool thing to use. Now this brings me to a couple of work from home tips that I do want to share with you. There's always loads of resources that I do have. And remember, you might be on a course now and you get some training, but by Monday you will be outdated because of agile technologies. Technology is just changing so fast, and Microsoft actually adds features on a weekly basis. It's unbelievable. You need to learn to keep on learning, okay? That's the best skill that you can ever learn. So if I go, the first thing I want you to help yourself. So that specific URL that you see there, Teamwork Tools, okay? If you go to the Microsoft 365 Adoption Resources and you go to Teams, there's this incredible flipbook that you can page through, and you can take the URL and actually add it as a tab on a team. So why don't you help people to help themselves? Add the Microsoft Teams Adoption flipbook to your teams to help people page through it and get ideas and understand how it works better. Another great resource when it comes to Teams is the teamsdemo.office.com. Again, I've got to give Alice the Pugin credit for this one because he actually told me about this. I didn't know about this. And this is a simple click through. This is what happens here. This is what happens there. This is to help people. So if you don't want to do elaborate videos and flipbooks, you can just click through this and it gives you a very, very quick basic intro with a layout of Teams, how Teams work, what it is that you can do on Teams. So that's very, very important for me. And then also, I don't have it on the screen now, but make a note of it. Go and search for Microsoft 365 training support, okay? And look for the support.microsoft link. That's going to give you all the training material that you could ever ask for. Then also, go check out the Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways. That's a template that can be installed in your site collection, in your tenant, that people can access, and Microsoft actually updates that training material. So the Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways is an incredible resource to deploy inside of your tenant that gives training material to people. But they've got to know that it's there, so make sure that you communicate and people know where to find it. Please make sure that people have the support that they need. A lot of us are suddenly working from home, and it's not like we can jump up and walk to the office across the hallway and say, hey, Peter, how do I do this and this, or where do I find that? Sometimes we have to struggle at home on our own. So add those resources to help people actually achieve more. Then also, if I think of a couple of pointers, some of us don't have great bandwidth at home, or maybe we have limited, data that we can use. So sometimes when I'm on meetings and my network's a bit slow, I actually pause my OneDrive sync for about 2 hours so that my sync doesn't always run as well. and uses bandwidth, okay? So that depends on whether you have bad network. But don't sync it like indefinitely. I mean, sync it just for 2 hours, otherwise you'll forget and then your OneDrive won't sync. So you can definitely go and set your OneDrive to pause if there's big files that it's busy syncing and you're in a call. Then also try and work on cable and not on Wi-Fi if it's possible. I definitely get better network speed when I'm on cable and when I'm not trying to connect on Wi-Fi. It's just more stable for me. Something else that I suggest to my clients as well is if they struggle with bandwidth, is join the calls on video, say hi to everyone, make eye contact, and then I normally go off video and I only use audio in my calls. But I always start my calls with video first. Then also in Microsoft Teams, when you share your screen, you have the ability to either share the desktop, so that's everything that's on your screen, like any app that's open, any browser that's open, or you can share the specific screen. So you could just share PowerPoint, okay? When you share a specific window, it actually uses less bandwidth. But remember, if you then go to another window, the people won't be able to see that. Also consider looking at metered devices. Sometimes Windows 10 is brilliant at that, and that's figured it out completely. But if you don't have Windows 10 yet, make sure that your machine knows when it's a metered device. A lot of times I tether off my phone, so I set my phone up as a Wi-Fi hotspot when I'm traveling. Make sure that your machine knows that it's a metered device and it doesn't suddenly run a Windows update or an Office update, or it updates all your OneDrive files and it ends up costing you a lot of money. And then also try and share links, not attachments on emails, because less attachments, the emails go through faster, your mailbox is smaller, it will definitely help you. And then also consider syncing your Teams or SharePoint sites down to your PC, into your File Explorer, because then you can work with documents and offline access as well. But please remember, if you do sync a Microsoft team down, the library, to your PC, that you're not the only owner on that library. So don't just delete documents on your computer because you don't want to see it there anymore, because it will go back to the cloud and delete it in the cloud. You have to go to the settings on your OneDrive and go unlink that library that you've synced to your PC. So please be very, very careful for that. And that pretty much brings me to the end of all my amazing things that I've wanted to share with you. We have about 14 minutes left, so I wanted to see if there's any questions, but I just want to remind you that I don't know everything, but I definitely know everyone who does. So if I can't answer your questions, I definitely want to make sure that I do get back to you and I can answer those questions. And please remember, keep a lookout for any information about the conference and when it's happening and how you can register for it. And I mean, this webinar was just such a great idea for them also. And I know that there's some blog posts going on there as well. But that pretty much brings me to the end of my webinar. So I'm going to hand over again to Shane. If there's any questions, I just want to see where I see the Q&A, but you're welcome to reach out if you have any questions. It's always easier for me to actually answer questions than to try and read and figure things out. So over to you, Shane.
Thanks for a great presentation, Tracy. And now we will start the questions and answers part. And should you wish to ask a question, please type it into the questions window now. Okay, first question in here, Tracy, is, and I think you answered just there in your last part, is where can I find training material to teach myself more?
Absolutely. So that was some of those things that I did touch on. So I want you to simply go and search for Microsoft 365 training and look for the support.microsoft link. You'll find loads of training resources there. And then also the Microsoft 365 resources, go and check that out. There's incredible resources available. Training material, information packs helping you with adoption, etc. And then right there on the screen, you can also see my blog site URL. I have honestly written more than 1,000 blogs because I love what I do and I don't think I've got anything better to do. So I've got loads of resources. And then also don't forget, inside of the apps these days, you also have help and resources. So inside of Excel at the top, under the help, there's show training. Inside of Teams, inside of Power Automate, all of the apps now has a little button there that helps you to get training. Inside of Teams as well, if you go in the command box at the top and you type /training, it'll take you to all the training material inside of Teams. So there's a lot of resources out there to help you. And don't forget about the community. Join Facebook groups or Twitter, follow the Twitter handles. There's a great community out there that's always willing to share some resources.
Great, Tracy. Okay, next one. In our organization, we don't really use Yammer, but are starting to adapt Teams. Do you recommend to adapt both, or can Teams be sufficient?
That's a good question, and it's normally a tricky question because, again, I think different people have different opinions about that. But I would definitely adopt both because I've got this business rule thing in my head. So Teams is all work for me, okay? It's all like structured, there's categories, and it gets super busy, okay? So if I belong to a team, let's say I'm in HR, to find content again gets very messy if you mix it with more social stuff, if that makes sense. So I would definitely consider adding Yammer groups for things like knowledge sharing or the community social or something where people can be more non-work focused and share things that's across teams, and then rather add that Yammer group as a tab on a team, because then it keeps the content in my team clean, if that makes sense. So I'm a very big fan of using Yammer for the social and community side of things in the company, and then structuring my teams to be more work focused and it's categorized, etc. But it doesn't stop you adding Yammer to the team as a tab to bring everything together so that people can actually find everything in one place. And also, if you don't want to adopt Yammer, I mean, I can't force you to do this, consider having a separate channel in each team for the social aspects so that it doesn't go in between the work content, if that makes sense.
Okay, next question. So
Yes.
why is using forms not suitable for business critical functions?
Wow, that's also a good question. Okay, and I always get into trouble for that. So the first thing I want you to realize is that your tenant is in a specific country. Okay, so depending on where you are from, South Africa for a long time didn't have data centers. Okay, so when we bought Office 365 licenses, our tenants sat in Europe. Okay, so if you have GDPR compliance type things, always make sure that you understand where your content is hosted, whether it's in country or out of country. Now, forms, sway, and stream sits in a separate tenant to your normal tenant. So it doesn't necessarily sit in the same tenant. It sits in shared data centers, if that makes sense. So it could be that forms, the forms data doesn't sit in the same country as yours. Just go and check out on your admin center, and there's some blogs that explains that. So that's the first reasoning, is that it actually sits separate from your normal tenant data. So please just check out on that, okay, number one. Then number two, a Microsoft form has limited form field choices, drop downs, text, it's got a date, numbers maybe. Let me think, does it have numbers? I actually can't remember if it has numbers now. But it's got very limited fields. And if you're used to SharePoint, you're going to realize that there's a big gap between forms and SharePoint. SharePoint has much more options when it comes to fields. I can build logic into it. I can use Power Apps to say that when someone selects this date, then don't do that. You can't do that with forms. So you can't build in extra functionality or extra logic into forms because it's really meant for forms like surveys or quizzes, okay? So business critical apps, I would rather have in SharePoint because I want to do something else with that data as well. When you build a form for a leave request, for example, that data is not going to lie in your tenant in SharePoint. It actually lies in a separate little database, and you've got to export it to Excel, if that makes sense. So there is Power Automates that you can write with Power, workflows. I would rather have that form, that business critical form in SharePoint, so that I can run other workflows on it, and I can run Power BI reports on it and stuff. So it's difficult to tell you what I consider as business critical apps or not. But as soon as it becomes part of my business core processes, I wouldn't build it in forms. I would absolutely use forms for things like sign in register at the gate when people get to the office, or surveys that customers fill in. And I've even got it as a contact request, or I want to attend this webinar or something. So that's the reason why I normally don't use forms for business critical apps, because the data lies separate to your tenant. It's a different concept with what it works like in the background. I hope that answers it. I might have answered it with more questions. I'm sorry about that, but that's my reasoning.
Okay, next question. If I disable the Create Join Teams button for my tenant, can I then enable on a person-by-person basis, like after they go through training?
Absolutely, and that's normally what I suggest. Now, firstly, I have to apologize, it's not easy. There isn't a slider in Admin Center that says don't allow people to create teams. You have to do it with PowerShell, Now, to be honest, I'm not a developer, so PowerShell kind of scares me like the dark web, okay? But there is an article on docs.microsoft where you can go and read up about how you enable that. So you can remove the permissions for someone to create teams, and then with PowerShell, you can go and assign permissions to a specific group. So you might have an administrator groups, or let's call it a Teams administrator Office 365 group. Then you can say that this group can always create teams. And then whenever someone's gone through that training, you can add them to that group. So that's something that I do. I first take it away. I say everyone must get training. And as people get the full training, I add them to the Teams administrator group because I know that they will make good business decisions when they use Teams. That's all I want. I don't want them to struggle. I'm not trying to take their rights away. I want to make sure that they have all the tools they need and all the training they need to make better informed decisions. So yes, you have to do it with PowerShell though. Well, you never know. They might have launched something that's made it easier, but it used to be a little bit more complex in the past. So there is an article that explains that. And yes, you can then add a specific set of users into a group and give that group permissions to add Microsoft Teams.
Great. Can we put a quota on user levels in Stream?
Stream already has quotas on it. I've got I'm going to have to think now what the quota is. So firstly, I'm guessing, okay, but if you go and search for storage limits for Stream, you'll find it. I think it's 500 gig per tenant, and then something like 500 meg per user gets added. Okay, there was something like that, but everyone uses from the joint storage. So it's not 500 meg per user, it's just that per user it adds to the storage. So there is already predefined storage, and it's possibly possible that you could limit that. I can't say that I've come across it or read up about it, but again, on docs.microsoft, on the technical docs, there should be some guidance on whether you can, because I would be careful of that. And another thing when it comes to Stream, okay, here's just a tip for you when it comes to managing the chaos, is that in Stream, another thing that I disable is the creation of org-wide channels. I don't let everyone, I know I'm a painful person and I'm sorry, I love people, I want to help them, but it causes trouble. So I remove users' ability to create org-wide channels because now everyone can create this open folder to put videos in, which means that when people navigate to Stream, it's just videos everywhere. It's going to be my favorite cat videos and my cooking recipes and everything. So I kind of manage that better as well. When someone wants an org-wide channel, so for the intranet or for training, then it goes through a process to have it created for them. So I rather have users only create channels that specific groups can see so that it doesn't flood Stream. So no, I haven't answered your question. I'm so sorry, and I'm curious about it now as well. Can I limit the storage per person in Stream? I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's possible, but I don't know offhand. I will definitely go and see if I can search that afterwards because I'm not sure if you can. So sorry that I didn't answer that, but I think you might be able to. I hope so. Okay.
Is it possible to have a password protected Excel file as a tab in Teams?
Absolutely. So if I think of a Microsoft team, now a Microsoft team has a set group of members and owners. Let's say 20 of us. So people have all gone crazy now for private channels, which I'm also against. I'm sorry, I am against a lot of things. So people will go private channels because this one shouldn't see that. And I'm like, why don't you just put a password on the Excel document? So the passwords we used to set up on documents in Office still works exactly the same. So that means that in a team, it could be that you have a password on a document that not everyone in the team has the password to, okay? But I wouldn't open that up as a tab because that's unfair. Because some people that are going to go to the tabs, they're not going to see it. I would rather just load the document and I put a note in the name to say reports password protected, and then only some people have the password. But I wouldn't necessarily add it to a tab. I don't think that would make sense, but you could absolutely do that.
Okay, and the last question, and one I think I might be even able to answer. In your opinion, is Lists on par with such third-party apps as Trello? We use Trello to track and manage work projects and tasks. Can Lists be used for that purpose?
Do you want to answer that, Shane?
Well, do you know why? We used to use Trello as well, right? And we moved to Planner, I think it is, in Teams.
That's it.
I would say take it away in Planner.
Absolutely. So Something you have to consider though, and we're nearly on time. So Planner is an incredible tool for project type management things. Please remember that there's no audit reports on Planner yet. Okay, I'm hoping that that will come soon. So anyone can edit and delete tasks in that Planner in that team. Okay. So again, there's a blog that I wrote about how you can protect yourself against that to write an audit log. So Planner can be used for it, but Microsoft Lists can absolutely be used for it as well. But Planner is already more focused on project management. So I would definitely consider using Planner. It's a great tool.
Brilliant. On behalf of the ESPC community, thank you, Tracy, for taking the time today to complete the webinar. Really appreciate your time today.
It was awesome, and thank you so much for everyone who joined. I've really enjoyed being here. Ooh, that big video of myself on the screen is always scary, but it's really been great on it, and I always love sharing some information. So reach out on social media, go follow me on Twitter or something, and always also remember, don't send me a direct message. Go on Twitter and say, hey, what do you think about this? At Tracy, and then me and other community people can help answer it as well. But thank you so much, Shane, for handling all the logistics behind the scenes and making it all amazing. And everyone must have a lovely day and have an awesome week further, and we'll catch up soon at the conference, hopefully.
Thank you, Tracy. Much appreciated.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Okay, everybody, this is the end of the webinar today. A big thank you again to Tracy van der Schef, and thank you for joining us today. Take care and goodbye.